All right, welcome everybody. Matt Krebs here with Creating Margin Technology Group. Thank you for coming to another webinar here. This one focuses with a longtime friend of mine, Ty Hoying, on AI video creation. And as we'll learn through this, we've provided, by the way, chapter markers in the YouTube video so you can kind of find your way around all the technical information, because we learn a ton in this video from Ty. We had an actual project where we were able to do research. Typically, Ty did. We have a full video of this historical figure, and I'll show it here in a moment. But thanks again for coming, and reach out if any questions. We'd love to work with you on this type of project. Let's show the video here, and we'll provide a link to it too if you want to watch the entire thing.
Having found a measure of success in trade upon my native soil, my Scottish spirit took to wandering of the vast lands across the Atlantic, and what harvests might be drawn therefrom. In the year of our Lord, 1872, my loyal secretary, Mr. C. Edwards, and I journeyed by rail to the open plains of western Kansas. There, beneath the setting sun, we beheld a sight most fair. Prairies rich and endless, stretching far as the eye could ken. The dreams that had stirred in me ere I left the shores of Britain now took on the form of purpose. I set my heart upon building a settlement, a colony for men of good standing and like intent, where we might labour together to forge an agrarian life in yon western wilds. The land, with its gentle hills and abundance of grama grass, seemed fitting indeed for the breeding of fine cattle, sturdy sheep, and noble horses. With careful thought and no small expense, I laid claim to some 70,000 acres in Ellis County, Kansas. There I founded the settlement of Victoria, calling my venture the Victoria Estate. A proper prospectus was penned and sent forth in my name, setting down the quality of men and the measure of coin required to make such a venture thrive and raise a society worthy of its name. Among the cargo brought to the New World were 4 bulls of the pure Angus breed, stock near unknown in America, yet prized above all others in the markets of London. Black-palled and full of vigour, I judged them well suited to sire sturdy calves from the hardy but lanky longhorn cows that roamed the southern ranges. Though I met an untimely end and did not see the fullness of my hopes made manifest, the Angus breed did take root. Since the year 1873, their influence hath spread far and wide, changing the face of cattle rearing in this land. What was once a scattered and roughshod trade is now the foremost purveyor of fine beef in all the world.
Ty Hoying, great to have you here. Thanks for joining us, Ty.
You bet.
Here we are again. It's been, 20 years back in Montrose, Colorado, beautiful Montrose. I was thinking about it as I drove in this morning with the San Juan Mountains there. Hard to beat. But do you ever get back?
Once in a while, way back in the day, but my folks moved out to Ohio the same year that I graduated high school, and so really no more family ties to the area, and so it's made it tough to get back there.
Yeah. Well, as we promised last week, everyone, we wanted to provide sort of a brief background into how we know each other. Obviously, Montrose High School there. We were in jazz band together. You're on the keys. I'm on the baritone saxophone. Barely hanging onto my seat there. I think I got ousted on one occasion. But then, did we both make All-State jazz band? Trying to think.
If I remember right, it was 3 of us, you, me, and one other that made 2004 Colorado All-State Jazz Band.
That's right.
And played down there in Colorado Springs. So
That's right. And of course, we had our quartet. This is the promise we made to people on social media last week. The name of the band. Do you remember it?
Yeah, After Hours 4.0.
After Hours 4.0. I don't want to take credit for that one. It's pretty horrible. So that was interesting times for sure. Uh, and so obviously since then, we've gone in different directions. I've had my career in digital signage, and somehow you ended up. Where are you living now?
I'm in Stockholm, Sweden. Been
Okay.
here for 12, almost 13 years, and been working in music, both performing and as an educator. And recently, because of shifting times and priorities and life and all the rest of it, then I decided to go back to school and study digital media, which aligns very much with what you guys are up to. And that's led me to where I am, getting started anew in this field. So,
Right. Right. It ends up being a small world either way here. So great to still be connected with you, Ty. So, as many viewers know, Creating Margin is a digital signage agency with a broad skill set. We've got the technical background in digital signage, we've got content creation capabilities, and we love to be able to consult within projects and help brainstorm things. In this particular case, we had an existing customer. We've done other work. We've even shared it on LinkedIn in particular about our work with the American Angus Association. And it was about 8 months ago that we had an opportunity just to have a brainstorming session with cogent ideas. And we came up with a short list of applications that might have been interesting. This was selected as a strategic application, this biography of George Grant. There was limited content around his story, and we wanted to sort of combine interactive capabilities with video creation, all creating a kind of a keynote for their headquarters building, which has the ability to be kind of a museum experience. So while we had that relationship, we have on our team skill sets in Adobe Suite, Premiere, and After Effects. There was some consideration for me personally and among our team about how we would approach the AI generated content. And as Ty will talk about, we really started in this project with a black and white image and had to really take it from there. So that's when Ty had posted on LinkedIn and talked about his experience and his research with artificial intelligence, AI generated content, and really kind of perfect timing where we decided, hey, this is an opportunity to bring Ty in, fill this gap, and have him really excel in that area that he focuses on. So that is the point of this session. Here we are 5 or 6 minutes in, telling you that what we really want to focus on here is to give Ty a platform, really give him the spotlight here, and allow him to do a deep dive into his process, because we were very intentional as a team about this project, about the creative process, and a big part of that was Ty executing on his portion of it. So kind of wanted to give you the floor, Ty, and have you run through, give people an idea of how these technologies work, what is required as you iterate through different versions of the content. I don't know how deep you want to go in terms of like file naming conventions and things, but I look forward to learning from you, and we'll ask some questions once you're kind of at the end there.
sure. Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to pop over here and share my screen, and then we can get rolling. Yeah, so as Matt said, what I brought to this project was the generative AI perspective. And for me, that was coming from my education in digital media with a focus on production, story, this side of things. So really making the human connection with digital technology, and bridging that gap has been the focus for me. And thanks to my teacher, shout out to Tobias Falk, who's in charge of the program. He's really pushed in those years for the usefulness of generative AI in media production. And so that's been a huge push on my part, and behind me, wind in my sails to really get invested in this technology and see where we might be able to utilize it in telling stories and connecting with people. And as Matt said, that really is where our roads crossed as far as bringing my knowledge and expertise and interest into this project has been the generative AI aspect. So we have this project that I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk briefly about exactly what it is that I did for this project, talk a little bit about how that might be iterated upon for any other kind of project, and then talk also about themes, ideas that connect and inform the decision-making process. So again, just briefly, what did I do? What did I bring to this particular project? Principally, it was to create a video or several video segments of George Grant to bring the man to life, based on historical images. There are a few existing images of George Grant from the archives that we've used to bring him from black and white photographs from over 200 years or over 100 years ago to a living, breathing person. Something else that was unique to this project is that we had supplied audio, that this came to my desk anyway, with the voice of George Grant already finished. And Matt and his team also completed a shot list based on that audio. So that aspect of it was already cut and dried. It was already finished. Another thing that we had was realism, was principle, that the character of Grant, as well as the context and settings in which we see him and hear him, had to feel real, had to feel reasonable for Victorian era, a Victorian gentleman of Scottish descent who had immigrated to the United States to fulfill his dream. Also on my plate was to fix transitions to and from a static state image for the display in the Angus headquarters. Then we have a still image. It's not on loop. So this image is still until the visitor pushes the play button, and then we transition into the presentation from Grant's. And there were a few supplemental animations. Some didn't get used, some did get used. Among those, Grant sitting and rocking in his chair on the porch. That could well be his estate. And a animated signature from Grant during the part of the film talking about him issuing a document in his name. Right, so let's move on to the process here. After considerable research, we come to the production process, and that's where I want to start, really. And here, as per usual, then we have references and generating images from the references. As we see here, we start with historical images. They can be also new images. It can be whatever for a given project. But in this case, we started with the historical images, generated a character in color to represent Mr. Grant. Then we generated images of the different settings in which we would see Mr. Grant, and then put the two together, and finally made iterations. We see here that the first iteration of him on the plains, he's wearing a top hat. Most gentlemen of the time actually wouldn't be wearing a top hat, so that's where we see the additional iterations where we swap out the top hat for a felt hat, which would be much more common for the time. Moving on, we take the images and convert them to video. Now, for this particular example, then we have image plus the audio that we tried to convert to video using a model from WAN. And this presented some problems, and I'll comment a bit on that as it plays. That we see the action from Grant is a little bit choppy, not quite believable, and also behind him there's some weird parallax happening, some weird things happening with the drapes on the left-hand side there. And this was one of the more mild cases from trying to convert image to video. And so what happened is that we ended up seeking a different solution. In this case, it was Runway Act 2. And Runway Act 2 takes live video and a still image as a character reference. So we have on screen now the driver video, or a segment of it, and the result from Act 2. And here we see a performance that we can time perfectly in sync with the audio. When I recorded this video, I had the audio playing in the background so that I was able to act basically in time with the audio that we expected to use. And this gives us natural motion and no background distortions like we saw in the WAN example on the previous slide. Next step after that, of course, is to have a lip sync, right? So the Act 2 performance does not have any lip sync. I tried, and very poor results for that. So instead we used just the performance and then used a different tool to add the lip sync. And for that ended up being sync.io, which is a dedicated lip sync tool, which ended up being the best of the bunch among those that I tested. And we can see here that there's considerable realistic mouth movement on the post sync from sync.io. Another element, like I had mentioned, is the transitions. Here we have several different examples. The left-hand column, high-low and cling, these are generally more expensive models, and both of them try their best, it seems, to merit their cost. High-low has this, what seems to be a card or a background moving out of frame. Reminds me a bit of a stage play or even old reruns of The Price is Right, where there's different elements on stage that are moving all the time. Cling, I can't really explain what happened there, that we have this sort of blood red cloud moving in and then some distortions, and then we end up with Grant in the room. On the other column, we have WAN and runway. These are sort of on the opposite side of things. These are sort of took the prompt to have a transition a little too literally, a little too underwhelming, I'll say. When we see it's basically just a wipe top down, and runway we see sort of a zoom in and a crossfade, and both of these effects are easily achievable with traditional editing techniques. Not at all necessary to use AI to generate these kind of effects. So that was a bit disappointing to see that that's how they interpreted. And I want to underscore that all four of these had the same start frame and end frame, so they knew where they were starting, where they were supposed to end, and the same prompt with words asking to move from black and white. Grant steps forward, confidently preparing to give a speech. And you can see how vastly different the interpretation of these different engines can be. We have also post-production, again, talking about the transitions. For whatever reason, the model that we ended up using for transitions decided to go with a slightly different color grade than the input. So you have the target on the left, which is the dialogue video, and we have the graded and ungraded on the right, which is the transition video. And in this particular example, the ungraded video is a little bit bluer and a little bit greener compared to the target. So that required in post-production to correct with color correction software. So again, to recap, and with particular attention, is there a workflow here that can be reproduced for later projects? Really, there's nothing here that is new to anyone who knows anything about a media production pipeline. We move from the brief to pre-production, into production, and finishing with post-production. On pre-production, right, we're accumulating a vast amount of information. Is there any brand information, brand icons, typography, anything to do with the brand, if that's necessary to have in the project? Any assets, like in this case, we use the pre-generated audio as basically the guiding point for the rest of the production. And here I'd also lump in budget as well, is definitely something to keep in mind, because AI isn't free. There are tools out there, but the frontier tools, and certainly the tools that you want to be using, are almost certainly not going to be free to use. It's certainly not in a commercial project like this one. On the other side, we have more of the creative side of things, assembling references, creating a mood board or two or three, and starting to come up with ideas about how to iterate on the brief and how to realize the video. And here a third point is to really take note of the current state of the art. Generative AI is developing constantly, and sometimes at a quicker pace than I can keep up with, and many can keep up with. So it's good, before you really start, to take a lay of the land, understand what tools are out there, what they do well, and don't be afraid to hop in and try some different models, see what they can do, do some tests, some trial runs. So all of this comes into what I would call research, and this research funds the foundation for your vision. And this is probably the most important part of any project with AI. I'm going to come back to this again and again. So vision, super important for all the rest of what you're going to do. After that is formed, we come into production, right? General pipeline, as I mentioned already, we start with the references, we move to creating images. From images, we create video, and from video, then we assemble our finalized AI media pool. But it's not always straightforward. Sometimes we can move from references to images and create further images from that, as in this project. I created first character references and scene references, and then use those to merge together before creating video from that content. And again, the video to video, right, we had the video content from Runway combined with a different video to generate the LipSync content. So it's not always straightforward. Also, there was an issue with one of the clips that we had made for this project where we had to actually backtrack from video to an earlier production phase, pull out one of the images that we had generated, make some corrections in that image, and then move forward again with generating a new video with the corrections in tow. And then we come to post-production, right? This is fairly standard. Editing clips, upscale or refine the details. You can absolutely use AI for that. Color correction, as I mentioned before, might be necessary. Color grading so that everything sort of feels cohesive, like it's belongs together. Frame rate conversion is definitely a thing. This project in particular used 30 frames per second. Most of the generated content from AI used 23 point something, or 24, or even 25 frames per second. So I needed to pass those through a particular tool to correct the frame rate. And then, of course, finally, we have implementation, which gives us our final media pool, which can be exported. As far as guiding principles, what are you thinking about throughout all of this? So, defining success before production starts, and that's where your vision really comes into play. Having this throughout the process is absolutely vital. I can't stress that enough, because that allows the creative eye to evaluate the outputs from the AI, which can be quite far from what you had anticipated. On the other side of the coin is to also be open to additional, we'll call it input from the AI. It may surprise you. It may be something that you hadn't thought of. It may be a slightly different variation. It may not be exactly what your mind's eye had thought to achieve, but it might be good enough to suit the project. Additionally, I would say to choose generative models based on their strengths and not to follow trends. You will find any number of self-proclaimed pros, masters, whatever, online who talk about the latest released models as soon as they come out. But it's not necessarily those that are going to give you the best result. We certainly found that out in this project, that there were some models that we used that aren't even talked about on social media, uh, let alone come up easily with simple Google search for the capability. So it helps to look around and have an open mind. And I would also, piggybacking off of that, encourage to continue to spot test and experiment throughout the creative process. That not every model is going to fit every purpose. Um, so even if you have decided on a particular model, um, in your based on your research, that may end up not being quite up to your standard. Again, going back to the first point with vision. So it's okay to say that this isn't quite up to what I want and to look for something better. And if you're lucky, you can find it. Third point, every step, especially in the production phase, is a checkpoint. It's an opportunity for you to put the humanity back into the process. Um, it's absolutely vital. Again, coming back to vision, that it is the responsibility of the producer to make sure that what you are creating stays true to the project and stays true to the vision all the way along. Fourth, uh, we have to take into account budget most of the time. If you don't have a budget, money isn't an issue, time isn't an issue, then congratulations. But for most of us, budget is a reality. So balance the cost of iteration versus perceptual gains. And by that I mean that sometimes you have to take a loss. And again, we come back to the first point and being open to what AI can contribute to a creative vision, um, or completing a creative vision beyond what you yourself had imagined at the start. But also, I would encourage to incrementally uh, develop your and refine your prompts, as instead um, as opposed to running the same prompt again and again and again, hoping to get a wildly different result. So instead of hoping that the machine will give you what you want, get in there, get your hands dirty, roll up your sleeves, and actually attack it and push it towards a better result. And with that, um, that's all I really have to say about this process.
Really interesting, fascinating stuff, Ty. Thank you for taking us through that process. Frankly, I was surprised at the number of iterations and tools that you used. How many total tools did you experiment with and use for this?
Oh goodness, I haven't really totted them up exactly. This is um, sort of goes hand in hand with a research project that I did earlier, indicating that most professionals tend to veer towards platforms that allow use of multiple engines. So for me, that's Kriya, um, and then you have quite a few different video and image producing engines at hand, as well as upscaling and editing, all these different things. So again, for me, Korea was that platform. There are other platforms, people who I know who are really stuck in with this technology. They tend to use platforms like Comfy UI, but that tends to be a little bit more advanced. Um, so
Was this dancing George Grant video? Was this you acting it and then translating that into video, or was?
this particular one, no, this comes from um, Pixverse,
Ah,
and I just told it to take the start frame, but then zoom out to a full shot of him dancing as if it were a TikTok video. And this is how it interpreted a TikTok dance to look from a man dressed in Victorian era clothes.
That's awesome. I did have a bit of a random question. So it seems like people consider Chat GPT to be the leading large language model, but I don't know. I mean, are you able to tell when you use these different tools if Chat GPT is the back language model being used, like the database, if you will, or the backbone of it?
Um, so what each of these, or most of these models have is similar to ChatGPT, who has a huge, a vast collection of texts that is converted into zeros and ones that are interpreted by the model for statistics, essentially. That's a very um, very simplified version of what's going on. Uh, but instead of using text, what these models are using is in regards to an image generator. They have a vast store of images that they are trained on, and then
Hmm.
metadata for those images. So, for example, if uh, it has 100 images, say, of a dog, then it might be tagged with a dog. And then if it's a dog in grass, or if it's a dog inside, or if it's a dog sleeping, or if it's a dog eating, right, it has these different tags associated to it. So when you prompt for that particular thing, a dog outside, then it's going to sort of zoom in on that particular training data.
Hmm. Hmm. So what you're saying is that the large language models for a lot of the text-based artificial intelligence AI tools are not necessarily the same as the video AI creation tools.
No, not at all. It's similar in that it's still machine learning, um, but the algorithms used are not exactly the same. And then there's also some other things going on in the black box that we as users don't really get to see. Things like content moderation and whatnot, so that people aren't using it to do bad things. Um, is also going on. But yeah, so video models are trained on videos, image models are trained on images, text models are trained on text.
So, bit of taking that to another extent here, it seems like there's a arms race, if you will, or a race to Mars, if you will, for AI between countries. Did you notice that any of these models are American versus Chinese, or is there any evidence uh, to see where the origin of these video creation tools are?
Um, Beyond what might come to mind, just keeping up to pace with these different things. Hilo, for example, is Chinese. WAN is Chinese, as far as I know. versus, say, Sora, for example, is American. That's the same as ChatGPT. So it
Okay.
depends very much on the model, but at this point, when it comes to a project and focusing on the result, then for me, it's not as a matter of picking based on the national team, so to say. It's more a matter of which is going to give me the best result for the end product.
And if you had to say from that unbiased Swedish perspective, which country does have the better tools?
Um, well, I'm going to stay neutral, typical Swede. Going to stay neutral and say that it depends very much on what you're looking to do.
For that, did you use you talked about color correction as a primary task involved with editing each of the clips. Did you use AI tools for that, or did you use typical, more common video editing tools for color correction?
Principally, what I used was DaVinci Resolve, um, but I did use color.io or color.ai to assist in sort of bridging between the one clip and the other. And that got me about 80% of the way, but it didn't get me all the way as far as creating a LUT to sort of correct the clip that needed correcting. So it still needed me to go in and fine tune with DaVinci with their tools.
Interesting. Well, Ty, thank you so much for this deep dive in your process. I think the final product was amazing. We showed it at the beginning of the video, but we'll include a link so that you can any viewers can rewatch that clip as you go through it. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure working with you. Let's do it again.
You bet. Yeah, let's do a few more.
All right. Talk to you soon, Ty.
You bet. Take care.